This is Propin, the Sports Betting Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to Prop Point. Erickson and Nick Whalen from RotoWire here. What a crazy, great sports night it was last night. We had an overtime, two overtime hockey games, two great NBA playoff games, three great playoff hockey games in total. Wild baseball results as well. We had some great pitching performances like from Max Meyer, from Hunter Brown. We're going to recap that. We're going to talk about Shedeur Sanders, latest on him. We're going to break down tonight's 3-game NBA playoff slate. We're going to talk a little NFL draft with John Henson, the guru, going to join us here in about 30 minutes. And we're going to talk about tonight's baseball betting slate, full slate of games in Major League Baseball. Lots to talk about there. Nick, let's jump right into the NBA, though. Man, oh, man, what great games we had last night, especially the second game. That, I really enjoyed the Clippers-Denver game. Just tremendous game.
Yeah, I'm glad we're starting with that one, Jeff, because we had a lot more betting success in the late game than we did the early game, where Karl Anthony Towns just pulled an all-time disappearing act in the second half. But look, we've talked a lot about the series on the show. I'm on record saying I think it's going to go 7 games. I know the Clippers to win in 6 is actually the favorite outcome right now at the DraftKings Sportsbook, but these teams are incredibly evenly matched. We've seen it certainly through both games of this series so far. Nuggets had a chance to potentially send this one to overtime. Christian Brown had a decent look with about 5 seconds on the clock, but I think it played out about as expected, right? This was no more than a 3-possession game at any point for the full 48 minutes. Denver led by as much as 8. The Clippers led by as much as 7. You never really got the sense that either team was on the verge of pulling away. Every time, you'd get a stop at a score, felt like Jokic would come back and hit a 3, or Jamal Murray would come back and hit a 3. We did see a reversal, Jeff, in terms of the turnovers compared to game 1. I think that was probably the number one reason that the LA Clippers ended up blowing that game, where they had a double-digit lead in the first half, was they committed 20 turnovers, 7 of which were charged to Kawhi Leonard. Well, last night it was the Nuggets' turn to turn it over 20 times. So it did turn into somewhat of a sloppy game at times. But to me, that speaks more to the defensive acumen of both of these teams, specifically the Clippers, who I thought were excellent with their hands defensively. Chris Dunn was really, really good. Once again, I know Jamal Murray got his numbers, but had to work for every single one of those points, every single one of those assists. Chris Dunn does give him a lot of trouble. Most importantly, though, on the Clippers side, Jeff, we got the Kawhi Leonard game that we thought we would. I thought Leonard was pretty uncharacteristically quiet in game 1, took only 15 shots, let James Harden kind of be the lead guy. Not the case last night. One of the best playoff games of Kawhi Leonard's illustrious playoff career, 39 points, 15 of 19 from the field.
Yeah, for a while, he had not missed a shot until he missed like one late in the second quarter. Hits that three-pointer right before halftime, beat like 3 players to get that off. Oh, so fun. Great. Hit that turnaround late in the game. It's so funny. Sam Van Gundy's like, yeah, you should do that more often. Well, yeah, if you could just do that shot on command, yeah, you should do that more often. But that was a ridiculous shot. It was a great shot. But, it was just playoff Kawhi at his peak, absolute peak there. We saw a lot of good role players, like you alluded to, stepping in, making some plays there. I thought it was a physical, but not dirty game. I really enjoyed the broadcast. I liked everything about this game. It was a thoroughly enjoyable experience. This playoff basketball at its peak.
It's the best series we have going right now. And, we have 3 good ones coming up. Well, 2 good ones, I should say, tonight. All due respect to the Memphis Grizzlies, who are 14.5-point underdogs in game 2 after getting shellacked. We're going to use that word by 51 in game 1. But yeah, this is the one that we circled right away, right? You knew it was going to be competitive. Denver getting the first 2 at home. Even though a lot of people, myself included, were on the Clippers, I almost threw that out the window. And I think if you're LA, mission accomplished, right? You stole one in Denver. You probably feel like you should be up 2-0 based on how game 1 played out. And now you get the next 2 at home. So it's certainly advantage clips for me as you start to look ahead.
Yeah, indeed. So I am really looking forward to that series. And like you mentioned on our show this morning, it felt like just watching this series, like, oh yeah, Clippers have to get this one here. Well, they're on the road. Fun fact too, that was brought out on the broadcast. They only played 1 game against each other in LA because of the way the play-in tournament worked. Not the play-in tournament, but the in-season tournament worked. 3 out of the 4 games in the regular season were in Denver too. So the Clippers, we'll see what sort of home court advantage they have in their new building. We'll see what happens there in game 3, but I'm very much looking forward to that. New York, Detroit, it would look like it was going to be kind of a bit of a repeat that Detroit would falter down the stretch, New York would take over.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't happen that way. All second half long, Detroit would get this like 12-point lead. You get knocked down to 7. Brunson would draw a foul against Thompson. It was a sketchy foul every single time, but they wouldn't cut it any closer. At the very end, they finally got it tied. But then the Pistons right away get that 3-pointer, and they held on for the win. I was surprised. I was impressed with the way the Pistons came out after an epic collapse in Game 1. This could have been the sort of thing that could have lingered. Instead, it didn't. They held on for the Game 2 win.
Going to be honest, Jeff, hopefully we could go through this one quickly because I could not have been more incorrect about this game. I thought Detroit, what you mentioned, I thought we would see more carryover from that Game 1 collapse. I think when a young team specifically, feels like they have a game in hand, you give up a 21-0 run, I really thought it would be difficult for Detroit to summon that same energy level, to get back to that same point where you feel like you have the advantage. And Detroit played even better, I thought, in Game 2, right? I mean, defensively, especially, the Knicks were just way too Jalen Brunson dependent. Credit to Brunson for, in some ways, dragging them back into this game. But I think if you're the Pistons, you want Karl Anthony Towns taking only 3 shots, completely disappearing in the second half, just standing in the corner, letting Jalen Brunson try to play hero ball the entire night. Obviously, one of the stories coming out of this game was the calls that the Knicks and Brunson specifically were generating. It was tough to watch. I'm not going to mince words there. I mean, Jalen Brunson, I think, has vaulted to the top of the list in terms of foul baiting, and it's brutal because everybody likes Jalen Brunson, right? And, he's kind of this underdog figure, and, to see him kind of go down the Harden route for much of last night was difficult. We'll see if they continue to get away with that as the series goes along. But I was just shocked. I was shocked that the New York Knicks did not make a point to get Karl Anthony Towns more involved. Had 6 quick points, had 10 in the first half, and they just completely went away from him. I thought that was the biggest mismatch in the Knicks' favor, was Jalen Duren was going to have to guard Karl Anthony Towns at times. They got away once again with Tobias Harris, an undersized defender on Cat. And yeah, Jalen Duren was better last night, but Detroit was still -8 with him on the court. They're -28 so far in Jalen Duren minutes in this series. So I thought it was a big mistake by Tibbs to not try to funnel the ball a little bit more to Karl Anthony Towns. And look, if you're looking for even more reason to be optimistic about the Pistons as this series shifts to Detroit, I would not have believed you, Jeff, if you said the Pistons won this game with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley, your 2 best 3-point shooters, going 1 of 14 from 3.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like it could have been a bigger lead for them. It could, Cunningham
Absolutely
could have gotten more calls. Although it's so funny that that Tibbs was saying that Brunson doesn't get the calls that Cunningham gets. I thought it was completely the opposite take for me. But anyways, it could have been better for the Pistons is really the takeaway I was getting at here. We'll see. I think they have to make it not just the Jalen Brunson show when it goes to Detroit.
100%.
They need to figure out a way to kind of disperse that a little bit more.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Tibbs has been notoriously hard-headed, when it comes to making these changes, especially mid-playoff series. But I think if you watch back Game 1 and Game 2, it's obvious that the Knicks need to get Towns specifically more involved as we move to Game 3.
Absolutely. Are you still using your buddy's gut instinct as your betting strategy? Come on, you deserve better. RotoWire has the real tools the pros use: rankings, projections, updates, and data that doesn't sleep. Whether you're making picks, setting your fantasy lineup, or placing bets, our award-winning insights give you the edge you need. Get started today by heading over to rotowire.com and entering Roto15 at checkout for 15% off any RotoWire product. We got some movement in the NFL draft on some of the NFL draft betting. Both the Browns and Giants reportedly fielding calls for their picks. The movement on Shedeur Sanders has changed a little bit there. The Steelers, now a favorite, no longer the Saints as favorites to draft Shedeur Sanders. Steelers are drafting at 21, so that predicts a little bit of a slip there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that wouldn't be surprising to me. I think you have to keep in mind with these team to draft player X odds that obviously teams could move around in the draft as well. And,
yes,
if the Steelers do truly have their sights set on Shedeur Sanders, I think there's a real chance that somebody else might take him before 21, or we could see a team, trade into that 10 to 20 range to potentially grab Shedeur Sanders. But the messaging is all over the place, right? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Shedeur Sanders slid all the way to the 20s. It still wouldn't shock me if somebody grabbed him inside the top 10. I mean, on top of this big shift in the Shedeur Sanders odds, we also got news this morning via Peter Schrager that both the Browns at 2, the Giants at 3, reportedly fielding calls on their picks. So, I know we talked a lot about feeling like, all right, the top 3, top 4, they're starting to crystallize a little bit. I don't know if that's even the case. I mean, we're a little over 48 hours away from the start of the NFL draft. And, this is really as unpredictable as I can remember in recent years when you're starting to look at those 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. The Jaguars have been sending smoke screens all over the place as far as what they're going to do. They're another team that could trade down. But I think the one thing that we can really take from this, Jeff, is that the New Orleans Saints, and this has been the reporting around this for a week plus now, I just don't think the Saints are all that interested in Shedeur Sanders. I think they rank Jackson Dart ahead of Shedeur Sanders. Doesn't mean they're for sure going to take Jackson Dart at number 9, but to me, if they have the choice there, if they do want to go quarterback at 9, I think Dart would be the pick. And I think there's a reason now that we see the Pittsburgh Steelers emerge at plus 190.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I also think it's interesting to see, what teams are going to be able to trade down. I know we talked a little bit about maybe your Jaguars wanting to trade down, but is there a market for it there? In a market where, this QB class doesn't feel all that strong. And maybe it's not as bad as the Kenny Pickett class, but it's not strong either.
Well, I think we're in the unique situation where we might see teams trading up for a non-quarterback, right? There's not a ton of premium cornerbacks in this draft. I think there are teams that could be looking to get their hands on Will Johnson out of Michigan. We could have an almost unprecedented situation where teams are trading up for a running back in Ashton Jeanty. So I don't, if you're trading with the Jags at 5, I'm not sure it's for a quarterback.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Well, plenty more draft talk, speculation. We got John Henson joining us in 15 minutes, so that'll be fun. But meanwhile, we're going to do a little more NBA playoff preview talk when we come up next here on Prop Points.
Watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Prop Points. Jeff Erickson and Nick Whalen from RotoWire here. Before we get into tonight's slate, let's look at the conference finalist odds. At this point, is it not worth betting on who will be the matchup for the Eastern Conference Finals with the Celtics versus Cavs as the clear favorite?
Yeah, to me, there's a difference between do I think this will happen versus is it worth betting? Because Celtics Cavs for the Eastern Conference matchup right now is minus 175 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. So it's priced that way for a reason. I don't know if I'm getting enough value there. There's always the risk of some sort of injury derailing either of those teams. I mean, both are so deep that it's hard to imagine that happening, but there's just not really enough meat on the bone for me to be attracted to that at minus 175. Now, I'm not going to give you an alternative either because I don't feel great about Celtics Pacers or, Knicks Cavs. Those are plus 450, plus 750 respectively. You could sell me perhaps on a best case scenario where Damian Lillard comes back tonight. He looks like Damian Lillard. The Bucks storm back and win that series. And, they have the best player in the series in what would be round 2 against Cleveland. So Celtics Bucks at 9-1. It's like if I was going to take a shot on a long shot, that would probably be the one. But we're also coming off of a horrific game 1 for the Milwaukee Bucks, and Damian Lillard could have his minutes monitored. Like we're asking for a lot essentially for that scenario to come to fruition. So this is one where I firmly think we will see Celtics Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm just not running to the window to bet it at minus 175.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's the thing. Sometimes like the best action is no action, right? We think like, okay, I see this. This happens for me in baseball a lot where I feel like I see like this line, like, oh, I want to go the under Dustin May 4.5 Ks today, for instance there. But then I see it's like minus 135. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to pay that price. I don't, what's the payout here if I am right? And you can get worse than that too many times. So sometimes the best action is stay away. Flip side, Western Conference. Is OKC versus Golden State as the West Finals matchup a good bet to take now at this early stage of the playoffs?
You're getting a little bit better value here, I suppose, at plus 180, but this is still not a bet I would make. I mean, the market just continues to love the Golden State Warriors, and they're up 1-0 in that series. I think the obviously the market has moved a bit on the LA Lakers, but we're going to see some shifts here tonight, specifically if the Lakers end up winning that game against Minnesota. They're 6-point home favorites right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm not just, setting the Lakers aside. I still think Thunder Lakers at close to 4-1 to me is a little bit more interesting. I mean, if the Timberwolves end up winning that series over the LA Lakers, I think you have to obviously put a lot of respect on that team. So Timberwolves Thunder at 3-1 makes some sense to me. Like, acting as if the Golden State Warriors, even if they get through the Houston series, would be this massive favorite over Minnesota or this big favorite over the Lakers. I don't really jive with that. I think that would be another 50-50 series to me where no result would really surprise me. We've talked a lot about, some of the flaws with this Warriors team being so top heavy, being so dependent on Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. So to me, this is still a bit of a stay away market until we have some more information on these first round series, but pretty firm on Oklahoma City being at least one of the representatives.
Yeah, me too. I did a draft. I do with my RotoWire buddy, Tim Schuler, every year. We do it for every sport, every playoff. We do that. You had the choice. Do you take the 1 pick or do you take the 2-3 in a snake draft? And I did the 1 with OKC just because I just feel like I feel as good about them getting to the finals as anybody. And, right. I'm giving up Boston and Cleveland on the other side. I know that that's the downside of that, this sort of strategy, but I just feel good about them getting there and even doing well in the final. So we'll see about that. Let's pivot over to tonight's slate. We got 3 games, starting off with the NBA TV special, the way it always is. Indiana Pacers playoff games are always on the non-premium network there. And so it comes to fruition here. Bucks Pacers, the big news, Dame Lillard is officially back.
Officially back tonight, and we had a feeling it would come either tonight or ahead of Game 3 when the series shifts back to Milwaukee. I mean, this is, of course, huge for the Milwaukee Bucks, and we haven't actually seen a ton of movement in the market. So I think a Lillard return, at least to some degree, was priced in. Pacers still holding as a 4-point favorite tonight. One thing that is interesting, though, when I checked early this morning, Damian Lillard's points prop was at 19.5, now down to 17.5 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. So I think it is important to temper your expectations. Keep in mind, Damian Lillard has not played basketball in a month. I know he's been ramping up behind the scenes, but there's a big leap, between doing on-court work at the facility and being thrown into a playoff environment. So by default, it's going to be a boost for Milwaukee, who desperately needed anything other than Giannis offensively in Game 1, but we may not see 38 minutes out of Damian Lillard tonight. I think that's a bit far-fetched. Overall, I do think we get a much closer game. The Bucks looked completely shell-shocked in Game 1. Nothing was working for them. Pretty much everyone outside of Giannis Antetokounmpo played a below-average game. You dig into some of the shooting numbers. Milwaukee went 4 of 18 on wide-open three-pointers, according to NBA.com/stats. And those will start falling to some degree. They might not put up Minnesota-level shooting numbers tonight, but you're not going to go 4 of 18 on wide-open threes. And again, even having a not fully up-to-speed Damian Lillard will help this offense tremendously. However, I thought the Bucks defense was just as big of an issue in Game 1, and Damian Lillard does not solve any problems there. They gave up a 123.2 offensive rating to the Pacers. Indy shot 53% from the field, 62% from 2-point range. Again, Damian Lillard really doesn't affect any of that. If anything, maybe he exacerbates it. So I don't really have a play on the side here. I would lean slightly toward the Indiana Pacers, even if I do expect Milwaukee to, by default, put out a better effort. But there is one prop that I really like tonight. That's Andrew Nembhard. Over 10.5 points, went well over this number in Game 1. He has a history of being a Bucks killer, went over this number in 5 of 6 games in the playoffs against Milwaukee last year, took 13 shots in Game 1. And, the Bucks have a lot of weaknesses. One of the biggest among those is perimeter defense, keeping quick guards like Andrew Nembhard in front of them. And, even if they do a decent job on Halliburton, you put more focus on Siakam and Miles Turner, something's got to give. And I think Andrew Nembhard is in position to once again take advantage.
All right, very well. Let's move on to Grizzlies Thunder. We talked about this. Game 1, a statement game. Kind of hard to bet player props there when you don't know how long the star players are going to be able to play. You do have an opinion on the side on this game, though.
I'm just going to lay the 14.5 with OKC. This is not something that you often encounter in a postseason setting, but man, OKC won that game by 51 in Game 1, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't even play that well in his limited action. It was not some sort of abnormal shooting game necessarily for OKC. So I think they keep the pedal to the metal here. I think they know they have some advantages, some key advantages all over the place against this Memphis team. They're now 5-0 against the Grizzlies straight up this season. Each of those 5 wins has come by at least 13 points. 4 out of 5 came by at least 17. 3 out of 5 came by at least 20. I mean, the Grizzlies have just had no answers for the Thunder throughout the entire season. In terms of props that I'm looking at here, Aaron Wiggins getting a little dirty here, over 10.5 points at a big game one. I like betting Aaron Wiggins because he's right on the borderline in terms of the rotation, where if it is a blowout, he's not one of those guys that's going to be sitting the entire fourth quarter, could still steal a few minutes there. He's gone over this number in all 4 games against Memphis this season. Also looking at Isaiah Hartenstein, over 3.5 assists at plus money. When it comes to SGA, I was dancing around, maybe taking the over 6.5 assists. He's plus 110, Jeff, to score at least 12 points in the first quarter, which is ridiculous, but speaks to, I think, the fact that he's going to come out with a vengeance after struggling a bit in game one. I'm staying away from the over 32.5 on his points prop. Could certainly see him, getting halfway there or more than halfway there in the first half, but with the blowout potential here, I'm not sure I could take that.
All right, very good. Want to know where the money is really going? Unlike other sources, our betting splits come straight from Circa and DraftKings Sportsbooks, giving you insight into where the sharp action is landing. Circa is known for taking big bets from professional bettors, while DraftKings provides a broader market perspective. That means you're getting the real action, not just public money, but the kind of wagers that move lines. See the percentage of bets versus percentage of handle on every game across every major sport, helping you make smarter, more informed bets. Get VSiN's summer special right now for only $59 until August 1st at VSiN.com/subscribe. Okay, we got the Lakers and T-Wolves. This is the game I'm most looking forward to tonight. Minnesota, blew the Lakers out in the second half. The Lakers made a tiny little run, but it was never really in contest. What happens tonight?
What happens tonight is I think we get a very close game. I think these teams are very evenly matched. Obviously, Minnesota had the advantage in game one. But again, if I think they're as even as I believe they are, then I'm taking the 6 points with Minnesota. It's one thing to lose game one if you're the Lakers. It's another to get completely blown off the floor, to never really challenge, to trim into that lead over the second half. Now, obviously, the Lakers defense will adjust. The Wolves, we know they shot above their level in game one, but the shot quality to me is the bigger concern for JJ Redick and the Lakers. The Lakers gave up 27 uncontested threes. The Wolves knocked down 19 of those in game one. Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels. These guys, they're legit role players. These are guys who have put up numbers for the Wolves all season. So I think that's where the Wolves have a depth advantage. You look at who the Lakers are bringing off the bench. They're kind of specialists, right? Dorian Finney-Smith, Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt. Nobody who can give you the type of game that Naz Reid or Jaden McDaniels can. I'll give you some props real quickly for this one. I do like Luka over 6.5 assists. Usually this is listed at 7.5. I think we're getting a little bit of a discount after he had just 1 assist in game one. Nickeil Alexander-Walker over 11.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Last 20 games, he's averaging over 16 ERA.
Very cool. We're going to shift our conversation to the NFL. Joining us on the Progressive Guest Line is going to be John Henson, the guru himself, coming up next on Prop Points.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into Prop Points here on the Sports Betting Network. Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson hanging out with you. We got a very special guest here on the Progressive Guest Line. It's the guru himself, John Henson. You know him from right here on Prop Points, hosting during the football season. You can check him out if you haven't already on Twitter at fantasy_guru. John, I know this is a big week for you. You got a bunch of NFL draft takes for us. Welcome back to the show, man. How's everything going?
Oh, it's going very well. Nice to meet you. And as you probably overheard, Jeff and I, during the commercial break, since we're two old heads, we were waxing poetic about the old days of the fantasy industry. Jeff and I and his partners, we go back. Jeff, we're like 30 years now. It's crazy. Yeah. Most impressively, I was 6 when I started, and I believe you were 4. So it's really impressive.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing. We just stopped at age 39, so and just kept on, doing right. What we're doing there. So it's just fabulous. But anyways, yeah, and you've got your business fancy points, which is obviously doing really well. You've done this show. You're not doing XM anymore. How does that feel to not be doing XM early in the morning, Guru in the morning? It's not that anymore.
I know. People, I still get tweets. People, miss it and all that. They get used to someone in the morning, and I was a guy that was always on the air. But, it's not great. It's kind of a shame that I had to kind of put that to the back burner, but I got to tell you, it's so good just waking up whenever the hell I damn well feel like it in the morning. So that's fantastic. So I am loving it, quite frankly.
All right, Guru. Well, we're happy to have you on the show, man. I know you're doing the full press tour this week with all of your NFL draft takes. Let's get right to it. We'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. We've seen a marked shift in the odds, specifically as it pertains to Shedeur Sanders ending up in Pittsburgh. Now, plus 195 to end up a Pittsburgh Steeler. This is something I know you think could happen. Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have, been thinking about it for a couple of days here, and I actually did not even know that it moved over to being the favorite, the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the more I thought about it, and I have my own little ways of thinking, and I consider myriad factors. But at the bottom line, this came down to me: need plus culture plus a legacy program, in the Pittsburgh Steelers. It really adds up. And talking about the need, I mean, the Steelers lost their last 4 regular season games. Then they got their butts beat in the playoffs. So they lost 5 in a row. And currently they have the worst quarterback room in the NFL with Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. So it just makes way too much sense. Plus it's plus 190. That's not too shabby. I just don't think any of the teams here at the top that have quarterback needs, Cleveland, the Giants, that's too early. Even Vegas, I think that's too early. And then I think by the time the Steelers are up there at 21, that's a little early for the teams that move back up into round number 1 to get that quarterback, teams at the top, like a Giants or a Browns. So end of the day, I added this all up. I'm like, yeah, I think he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. So let's win some money here at plus 190.
For a short period of time, Shedeur Sanders was the betting favorite to go to the Saints, especially with the news on Derek Carr's shoulder. But that has changed a little bit. Another quarterback has entered the chat there. You think Jackson Dart might go there? Tell me more about Dart. Tell me more about the Saints' needs.
I mean, they have Derek Carr on the roster. So, I mean, that's not dire right now. But, I think Pittsburgh's quarterback room is worse. But, I like it look, this is a little bit of a long shot here, a little bit of a contrarian play. Basically, my contention is that there's maybe a 51% chance, 52, that Dart goes over Shedeur, which means he'd be the second quarterback drafted, and that's plus 200. I mean, the odds on DraftKings for Dart to be a first rounder are minus 300. So the books think he's going to be a first rounder. And then even total quarterback selected in the first round over 2.5, that is the favorite. That's minus 135. There will not be another quarterback considered in the round 1 other than Dart and Sanders, of course, and then Cam Ward. So, yeah, I mean, it just comes down to, I don't know about New Orleans. It could happen. Absolutely could happen. But it comes down to, do you think Dart will go over Shedeur? A little bit of a hot take, but I think at plus 200, it's a worthwhile gambit.
The NFL draft starts this Thursday, and VSiN knows every pick matters. Tune in for 2 special live shows breaking down every pick from a betting perspective. VSiN Primetime Draft Edition starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, followed by Cashing Out Draft Edition at 11 p.m. Plus, explore our NFL Draft Hub over on the VSiN Watch app, featuring exclusive analysis, team needs, and insights. Visit vsin.com/draft for full coverage and stream it all on the VSiN Watch app. We got the guru, John Henson, joining us on the progressive guest line. John, I want to get back to some of the NFL draft betting markets that you're eyeing up. And I know you're taking a look at Quinshon Judkins, the other running back alongside Travion Henderson coming out of Ohio State. You're looking at Judkins to be drafted not only in the first round, but to also be perhaps the second running back off the board.
Long shots here. Let's be clear here. I mean, to be drafted in the first round is plus 1,800. So, I mean, we're playing with, we're just throwing a couple shekels over there and hoping for a big payoff. I mean, we're not putting $1,000 on this puppy. But I like Quinshon Judkins. I do think that there will be 3 running backs drafted, and he does not even have to be one of them for this to hit at plus 180. Between Ashton Jeanty, Judkins, Hampton, Amarian Hampton, and Travion Henderson, I think we'll get 3 out of that 4. I don't think any of the other running backs are going to be considered in round 1, but I think we get 3 out of the 4. And, when I look at the board, what happens, if the Broncos are up there at 21 or 20 and they look at their roster and they're like, Sean Payton is like, Jaleel McLaughlin, he may not be Travion Henderson, but Quinshon Judkins would pair a little bit better, I believe, with a Jaleel McLaughlin. So I don't necessarily think Travion Henderson is going to Denver. So that's my thought process there with the plus 1,800 going in the first round. Again, that's a long shot, but again, we will get 3 running backs drafted in round number 1, I do believe. And I'm not overreacting. Oh, the running backs are back. Some people say, oh, well, you're getting tricked a little bit. Not really. I think they are kind of back. Not totally. You might argue Genty at 6 or whatever is not a great efficient pick because they're not really ready to win and all that. But the running backs are back. So I think we do get the 3 running backs in round 1.
We're talking with the fantasy guru himself, John Henson from Fantasy Points and host of Prop Points during football season as well. John, you're a huge Vikings guy. They only have 4 picks in this draft. They have to pick at 24. Are they going to spend it on a safety? Or is it something else? What do you like for the Vikings to do in the first round?
Real quick, before I answer that, let me back up a moment because I took the time to look and here are the teams with a legitimate chance to draft a running back no later than like the 3rd round. Cleveland, the Giants, New England, Jacksonville, Vegas, New Orleans, Chicago, San Fran, Dallas, Miami, Cincinnati, Tennessee, Pittsburgh, LA Chargers, Green Bay, Minnesota, Houston, Washington, KC. Like it would shock no one if one of those teams took a running back in one of the first 2 or 3 rounds. Now on to the Minnesota Vikings. They only have 4 picks. So they need to maximize this and get an impact starter. And their roster is set. I mean, they could probably use help on the O-line, although, they added Freeze and Braden Smith. So not Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, the other Colt veteran. So they added 2 veterans on the O-line. We're good at receiver. They could certainly use a running back. Now you turn your attention to the defense. It's clearly safety or corner. And I'm going to go safety here because I think it's a little bit of a bigger need. Cam Bynum, they lost him in free agency, one of the guys they could not keep. When you look at the depth here, they do a good job at corner. They lost some guys, but they do a good job of getting a lot out of the players that they have. They have bodies at corner who I think they can fill in the gaps for this year. Then they can draft a safety and have him learn under Harrison Smith for a year, like a Malachi Starks, and now we're good. So I'm feeling really good about it. It's definitely going to be a corner or a safety, but at plus 200 for safety, I think that's a slam dunk.
All right, Guru, we got about 25 seconds for this one. I don't like to say this often on TV, but I am a Jaguars fan. I know you have a long shot as a potential first-round stab for them.
Well, I don't think enough people are talking about tight end, quite frankly. So I think Tyler Warren, plus 2,000 as of yesterday is pretty darn good. They traded away Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. So I like that one. And I'm going to crowbar one more in here because I don't know crap about the 29 Major League Baseball teams, but I do know my Los Angeles Dodgers. So Dustin May over 4.5 strikeouts today. You are welcome.
All right, there we have it. A bonus best bet on the way out from the guru himself, John Henson. You can catch him on Prop Points during the NFL season. Catch him on Twitter at Fantasy Guru. Jeff Erickson's best bets in Major League Baseball coming up next here on Prop Points.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Time to break down the Tuesday Major League Baseball slate here on Prop Points. Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson taking you up to the top of the hour. Make it rain with Adam Shine coming up next on VSiN. Jeff, we got a lot to get to. Full slate coming our way tonight, but we will begin out in Chicago. Dodgers and Dustin May heading up to take on Shota Imanaga and the Cubs. Total in this one sitting at 8.5. Dodgers slight favorite on the money line, minus 122 at DK. Cubs plus 102. I know you are looking at a money line play as well as a pitching prop.
Yeah, and there's a couple interesting things going on in here. First of all, weather might be an issue in this game. Not quite like Friday where the wind was like 22 miles an hour, really blowing out. We saw the huge totals, but it is blowing out 10 miles an hour. It's supposed to be some chance of rain in this game as well. We'll see how steady that wind is, how steady the rain is there. That could affect some of the outcomes of this game. Imanaga has allowed 3 home runs in his 2 Wrigley starts so far, but the Dodgers aren't as strong against left-handed pitchers, and they didn't get to him that much in the Tokyo game, where Imanaga obviously was kind of limited. Dodgers with an 80 WRC plus versus left-handed pitching so far this year. Some of their bats that are specialists against those left-handed pitchers are kind of struggling right now. Guys like Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor barely even plays now against them. Andy Pages has gotten off to a little bit of a rough start. So you can kind of see that, okay, this is why they're not really tackling left-handed pitchers very well. So I kind of like the Cubs side of this one here at plus 102. Get some plus money there. Cubs, they don't strike out a ton. They're 25th in baseball at strikeout percentage at 20.4. It's a little higher against right-handed pitchers at 21%. Dustin May doesn't strike out a ton of batters, more so than he did in the past, but it's a 21.5%. So, I hate to go against the guru himself, but I kind of like the under 4.5 Ks. The only problem is it's a pretty big minus money bet at minus 140. I don't really want to get on that. So I wouldn't bet it at that price. If the price went, got a little bit more favorable price, maybe I go there. It's not, so I definitely, it's more of a stay away on that. And I hope, because I have Dustin May in some really critical leagues. I hope I'm wrong about this, to be honest. Yeah. I hope he gets like 7 strikeouts there, but I'm a little worried about the start for Dustin May. Cubs are leading baseball in runs scored per game too, still.
Let's move over to an NL East battle. We got the Phillies at the New York Mets. That's Christopher Sanchez going up against Griffin Canning. If you like the Phillies on the money line, Jeff, minus 135 is the price at DraftKings. Mets plus 114. We got a total sitting at 8. I know you're looking to veer away perhaps from the money line and looking at the run line when it comes to the Phillies.
Yeah, that way, if I really feel strongly about the Phillies, you're probably better off betting the run line, getting better pricing again here. And this is about the starting pitching matchup there. Christopher Sanchez, he may be making the leap. He may, this is his second full year as a full-time starter. He started in 2023 some as well. He was kind of a hybrid pitcher then. Last year, full year as a starter, little slippage down the stretch. But look at what he's done this year so far. 30.7 K percentage, still with a walk rate below 6%. Last year, he struck out 20.3% of the batters he faced. So that's a huge, huge leap. Fastball velocity is up for him. He's averaging now 96 miles an hour on his fastball. These are good, really, really good signs. Griffin Canning, good start so far for the Mets. Nice little, especially with the 2 starters out, he's been essential for this team. He's been very helpful. 2-1, 3.43 ERA. He's a little bit of a ticking time bomb. 11.4% walk rate is the thing that really scares me, especially because he's now facing a really good lineup in the Phillies. He does induce a ton of good ground balls, and that's a good thing there for sure, especially if you're trying to keep the ball in the park. Last year, faced the Phillies, had a pretty ugly outing, walked 5 batters in 5 innings, gave up 4 runs. I feel like more of the same could be happening here. Because of the disparity in the pitching matchups here, I like the run line for the Phillies. I think that if you take them at minus 1.5 runs at plus money at plus 124, I think that's a pretty decent price. I think it's better that way than paying the minus 135 price for the money line.
I like it, Jeff. We have, an interesting interleague matchup between 2 first-place teams tonight. Padres on the road at the Detroit Tigers. Nick Pivetta taking on Jack Flaherty, and just injuries keep on hitting this Padres team, Jeff. They placed Arias on the concussion IL earlier this week. He's going to miss a little bit of time. Obviously, Jackson Merrill, Cronenworth, among others, have also been on the IL for the Padres. They keep on rolling, though. Still sitting in first place in one of the most competitive divisions in baseball. Now, I know you have a play on the total for this game, and it is tied for the lowest total on the board tonight with Giants Brewers, 7.5.
It is. And I'm not quite sure what to make out of this matchup here. This is a very tiny sort of lean on this one here, because Nick Pivetta, it's his first. He's only had one other road start, and he struggled in that one, but that was against the Cubs. Cubs, as we alluded to earlier, pretty strong matchup, pretty strong offense. Tigers are decent, but they may not have Kerry Carpenter again, and I think he would be a really good matchup against Nick Pivetta. Meanwhile, Flaherty, I've kind of faded Flaherty going into the season. I've been flummoxed by that. Brewers did get to him his last time. Flaherty did have some middling outings against the Padres last year. The more I talk about this game, the less strongly I feel about this total actually here. You got it at minus 120 for the under 7.5. I think it's a half a unit play. I think this is a reflection of the Padres lineup being missing so many significant bats. But just a couple of well-placed Fernando Tatis bombs could really hurt me in this one here still too. So I wouldn't say it's a huge priority game for me.
All right, a slight lean, we will say, on the under 7.5 for Padres Tigers. If you're curious, by the way, Padres still plus 750 to win the NL West. Dodgers, who've now won 5 of their last 6, minus 500 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Tigers still slight favorites to win the AL Central at plus 105. Let's move over to the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the San Francisco Giants. Giants took game 1 of the series last night. We get Jose Quintana going up against Jordan Hicks.
Yes, we do. And this one's an interesting one here. We saw, first of all, really fun matchup last night. Hayden Birdsong was awesome in relief in this one here. Pitched 3 innings last night, which means he won't be available tonight. That's part of my analysis here, is that I think the Giants bullpen might be kind of a little weaker. They've been on a stretch there where they haven't had so many days off. They had full 7 games last week. Birdsong's not available tonight. Jordan Hicks was awful in the first inning against the Phillies last week. 5 runs in the first inning. We were on the over 5.5 hits, and he had 5 hits allowed in the first inning. I thought he wouldn't even get it. May not make it out of the first inning. Instead, he stabilized. We barely got the over in hits because it took him to the 5th inning to allow that next hit. So I'm not really quite sure what we're going to get out of Jordan Hicks here. However, I feel like the safe play is to go against him and the bullpen depth a little bit there. Meanwhile, the Giants, we've pointed this out a couple of times. You think that they'd be better against left-handed pitchers? They haven't been so far. They strike out 26.2% of the time versus left-handers, have an 86 WRC plus against them. This, despite Wilmer Flores being among the lead leaders in RBIs. Because of all this, I've got a lean. I'm going to take the plus money on the Brewers on the money line here. Go plus 120 on the Brewers money line. I think that there's some fair value. I wouldn't mind taking a little bet on the over 7.5 runs as well.
All right, Jeff, before we get to our G-Bank best bets, I do want to run one more game by you. That is Seattle on the road at Boston. Bryce Miller going up against Brian Bayo, who is making his season debut. So any way that you are either backing Brian Bayo or targeting him here?
I'm not backing him. I'm going to take the under on his strikeouts, the 4.5 strikeouts against the Mariners at minus 105. I just think that there's a chance that he doesn't go deep into this game. Mariners, I think weather might be an issue, which again, all strikeout props, you want to kind of, steer away from a little bit there. We'll see. Total in this game is 9, by the way, also. So they're expecting a little bit of a higher scoring game. I've just been kind of out of the Brian Bayo business for the last year or so. I think like his skills have regressed. We'll see what happens coming off the IL, but I'm going to be a little bit pessimistic about him.
Our G-Bank best bets of the night are brought to you by G-Bank, the official bank of VSiN, and G-Bank is up in the ante with up to a $750 bonus for new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customers. New customers, if you spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from opening your account, you get a $250 bonus. If you spend $50K on gaming and sports app loads within 30 days, you get another $500 bonus, so potentially $750 in bonuses. You can apply now at VSiN.com/GBank. That's VSiN.com/GBank. Subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions do apply here. Jeff, we both got some NBA best bets tonight. Where are you going?
I'm going to go LeBron James, the over 24.5. Had a bad game against the Timberwolves in game 1. I think he gets it back together here. I know that, the line on him this year against the Timberwolves actually isn't that strong, but I think he gets there this time.
Yep. I think we saw a feel-out game, a classic feel-out game from LeBron in game 1. Would expect him to be significantly more aggressive. I'm just taking the Oklahoma City Thunder to sweep the Memphis Grizzlies. Minus 120 right now at DK. I think that is a very fair price. I think after the Thunder win tonight, we're going to see that price skyrocket. So locking in the Thunder to sweep the Grizzlies at minus 120. That's going to wrap it for us here on Prop Points. Make sure you stick around. Make it rain with Adam Shine coming up next. He's going to have Zach Cohen from VSiN giving his best bets in the NBA. Best of luck. We'll talk to you tomorrow.